Okay, so we've got the site topography modelled up to a level where we can start drawing in some more detail. So I'm just showing you there a view where you can see the sub-regions that I've added, which are actually going to be a good starting point for the first drawing that we really need to produce from this Revit model, which is going to be our site analysis plan. And so, just going to the website that has the checklist to give you an idea of the things you should be thinking about drawing. And so, looking at the elements there, you can see a lot of them are going to be just done with text. So I thought I'd spend a little while looking at annotation generally, just to make sure that's clear with Revit. And it will actually give you a good understanding of Revit if you still aren't clear about that. And then we'll move on to some of the physical elements that you should be drawing. So I'm going to go to one of the views that I've set up for the site print, that's what it's called. And I'm going to duplicate that by right-clicking, and I'm going to go to Duplicate View and use the Duplicate option. And this actually ties into what I'm about to talk about with the annotation. And so I should just check with you, do you know what the difference there between those two options is? The first two, duplicate and then duplicate with detailing? And it's more than just the detailing. So what's the difference? If I go duplicate, what might not be copied? That's the way you want to be thinking. So annotation, that's spot on. That's what I was hoping. Yeah. So detailing and annotation are interchangeable terms with Revit. So when you hear those terms, they're basically referring to 2D elements. They're overlays on your view. So everything else is pretty much 3D, or a plane that operates across your 3D model. But a lot of things in Revit are unique to the view, and they're considered either detailing or annotation. And in this case, I don't have any of those things. So if I choose duplicate or duplicate with detailing, it'll be the same. I don't have any detailing or any annotation. On the Annotate tab, it'll remind you that those things are really the same, or considered as one thing with Revit. Detail, you can see there. Dimensions are another type of annotation, of course. Text is, again, annotation. And so if I was to have some text here, so maybe a street name, let's just do one. So I'm going to go to the text tool. Are you all using that to do your text? No one's using, hopefully, model text. I see people do that sometimes because you see that button on the architecture tab, but hopefully that's clear. You've all been using Revit, so that's good. Annotate, and then text is obviously how you do most of your annotation. And then it's a little bit limited with Revit. You don't have all the fonts you'll get with Photoshop, or especially with, say, InDesign or Illustrator, but it's good enough for this project. So if you want to do your text in Revit, that's fine. Edit type, of course, will let you make new text styles or text types. And the ones set up in your project initially are all going to be Arial, which is maybe not an appropriate font for street names. So I'm going to duplicate that, and we'll call it, I'll just use the font. So I'm going to use Roman T. That just means Roman triplex. Times New Roman is very similar to that, so I might actually use Times New Roman as the font. But I'll see if we've got Roman T. We should have. Yes, there it is. Okay, so Roman T. Like I said, it's very similar to Roman Times New Roman. And then the size, for street names you can make it really large, so 10 mil might be about right. But I can come back to this and adjust it. So I'll leave the size out of that until I'm sure of it. So I'm just going to click OK, and then I can make my text. So say City Road, and Darlington Road is all I'll do for now. Now, a little thing that a lot of people do with these drawings, where you're showing street names, is put a space between everything, just so it stretches it out a bit. Makes it read a little bit better. Okay, so if I just double click on that, then I can do the same there. So space arrow, space arrow, space arrow, space arrow, there we are. And of course you can rotate the text really easily just using the icon that comes up after you select it. Well, it's going to depend on the scale. So, and that's actually something I'm about to set up. So I wouldn't determine it exactly. It'll be maybe between 8 and 12 mil usually, but the way you should set this up is to go right into, or right ahead to the setting up of your sheet. So now that I've got that view set up in a very basic sense, I'm going to go down and make a new sheet. I've got sheets all there. Right click and go to new sheet. Show you that one. Just wanted to make sure because sometimes people are used to just doing it from the view menu or the view tab. So right click sheets all, new sheet, and then I'm going to go to load. And so we have the horrible title blocks in the default library, which you can always use if you don't have anything else. But remember I showed you where the TU library is. If you go to the P drive, student resources, and then go down to the commercial class. I might copy this across later, but for now I'll just leave it there because it does take up a lot of... Oh no, it's 2.6. Okay, so you haven't given me everything. Anyhow, that's enough for now. I'll give you his big one. He's been a bit naughty there. Well, it's his stuff, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that, but I'll probably try and give you his full one, which is about 10 gig later. Just don't try not to tell everyone because he might not be happy. Sorry? Yes, I know. None of those guys listen to my videos. It's fine. It's all students, so that's okay. So, if you then go to the library here, it's in his TU Revit Library 2015. You'll see he should have a title blocks folder. He should have. Oh yeah, here, annotations title blocks. There we are. And you can get one from there that might be a little bit better. You can of course adjust them to your heart's content. So I'm just trying to find one that's a little bit cleaner though than what we had. That'll do. Well, what about this one? Oh, it doesn't show us a preview. This'll do. Have you all made title blocks, or at least adjusted them? Yeah, they're pretty easy to work with. So I just want something to say 3 really, and something that we can put the view on. So, okay, so I've got my view that's still called site print copy 1. Maybe before I put it on the sheet, I'll give that a better name. Site, you all know, analysis. Now I'm going to drag that onto the sheet, and I can see it's huge. Not going to fit. So, in the brief, you can see it. It's required that you format this for A3, which is fairly small. Often a DA set for a project like this will have much larger sheet sizes, probably AO actually, but you know, at least A1. So probably if you squashed it right down, get it to A2, but again, A1 or even AO is probably more likely. So this one's going to be a bit unusual. Normally you could use bigger scale, but for this, and so what scale do you think might be appropriate normally for a site analysis? If you have to. 1 to 200 is better for site plans, but yeah, for a bigger site and especially small pages, you might have to go to 1 to 500. So yeah, that's the right idea though. So if I select the view on the sheet, I can still of course change the scale in properties here to, well I know we're going to have to go to about 1 to 500. And then of course I can adjust this. Now it might look small, but I want to expand that view. Now while I'm here though, do you want a little trick to move the tag? So notice how I've moved the view, but the tag is still big, and fortunately it's actually in an okay position. But as well as shrinking the tag, you'll often want to move it. And have you ever had trouble with that? Something a lot of people struggle with. So you can easily shorten it by just selecting the view. You get the grip there to shorten the tag. But if you've ever wondered how to move the tag, it's actually quite simple once you know, but it took me a couple of weeks to work this out. you've got to just deselect the view and then you can click and drag on the tag separately. Just one of those little things with Revit that's a bit confusing. Now, if this is the only view on the sheet, it may not even need a tag. So you can always set the viewport to be no title in properties. So now I can format the view a little bit better, that I know the scale and the sheet size. So I'm going to just activate the view on the sheet, select the crop region, and which hopefully you've already got turned on, but if you don't, it's the button down here which will hide and unhide, and the button next to it activates and deactivates the cropping. So that's my crop region, which I'm going to just expand so it takes up as much of the page as possible. There we go. And a good option there sometimes can actually be to show the satellite image, so you can see the buildings and other things. But here, I think if you have, well, you're limited by the sheet size. If you have it at 1 to 500 and just try and center the site, that should give you a good basic setup. And so I can see now that the text size, which may be appropriate for a larger sheet size at a different scale, really doesn't work at A3. So I'm going to go back and just with one of the text items selected, edit type, and well, I'd say half that size is better for this sheet size, so 5 mil, okay, that looks pretty good to me. Maybe even a bit smaller, but that's okay. So just going to adjust that slightly, and so all of your annotation now you can use following that approach, and there'll be lots of little notes around on this drawing. Of course, the elevation views don't need to be there, so you can select one of them, and do you know the shortcut to hide category? Oh yeah, VH, exactly, that's good, yeah. So EH for elements, and then, yeah, spot on, VH to hide the whole category. And if you're watching the videos, you can right click and obviously choose hide in view category. So then we can set maybe shaded, that's one option. But if you had a look at this other one, consistent colours, it's only going to be slightly different here, but have you ever wondered why they have those two different options? Which at first look similar, but you'll see later they actually do different things. So the difference really, you'll see it more clearly when you have a look at a very basic form, and I'm going to model one just so you can see that. And then I'll come back to that, that shading option. So I've got a building up here. So we want that building on our site analysis plan, definitely, and we probably want to get shadows from it as well. So you could do the lines back in AutoCAD, and if I was doing this to myself, to be honest, that is what I'd do. I'd draw all the lines, the outlines for the buildings, and then update the link into Revit, and then I can just pick the lines to generate those as solids in Revit. But with this project, you don't have a lot of buildings that you'll need to show in the site analysis plan, really. Luckily, there are a lot of open space around this for the inner city anyway. And so you could skip that step and just go straight ahead to drawing in Revit. So, because I know a lot of you haven't used AutoCAD a whole lot. So I'll maybe start by showing you the drawing of basic forms in Revit, and just see hopefully what you've done before as well. Is this a tool you use a lot? Under the component model in place? Hopefully that's one you all know. Oh, right, okay. Well, okay, so this is good, because we need to look at these things. That should be your main modelling tool. And if it isn't, it needs to be. You can also model in a family file, of course, but whether you model it in a separate file or you model in place, it's still a family, and you'll have the same modelling tools. So again, that when you think about modelling something that you can't get with the wall tool or the door tool, that should be how you're thinking. And then you'll see it'll ask you for a category. So, well, which ones have you been using for your models? Yeah. What was the other one? Structural connections. Why were you doing structural connections? That's a funny one. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. You can use the structural categories. I avoid them because they, they force you to do things in a certain way. But yeah, that's good if you've done those. But the other ones maybe to think about. Casework's a great one, and furniture. I'm just pointing those out because they're ones that people often use instead of generic models, but they're different. So furniture and casework will display differently. So if you're wondering really what these categories do, it's all to do with your object styles. And if you don't know what that means, we'll get into that later. So you should be thinking about your categories. And if you don't know though, generic models is okay. And the good thing about generic models is that you can usually change it to one of these other categories later. So, and that's why I'm just spending a bit of time on the categories, because if you choose the wrong category, like one of the structural ones, or even some of these others, then you can't change it to the category you need it to later. So that can limit you. But again, if you know it's the right one, the structural categories can be good. But for now, I'm going to stick with generic models, and we'll call this buildings. Sorry, neighbouring buildings. And I'm going to use extrusions where possible and just do these as block forms. I'm going to show you a few tricks to keep things at right angles. So I'm going to draw a line along the edge of that building. And don't fall into the trap of always using thin lines. You'll start to normally you would start to lose things here. The line weights are showing pretty badly anyway, so that's just what you have to live with. But what I want now is I want to make a rectangle, and you can try to draw another line and get it to snap to 90 degrees to the previous line, and Revit's pretty good at that. So here you can see it's perpendicular to the line that's highlighted. If it doesn't detect that though, there's another option. You can actually use the rotate tool, turn the copy option on, and just drag your base point to the end of the line, and then rotate around 90 degrees. And then also if you've drawn a line previously, you can of course offset or copy that line to make sure that your new line is parallel to the previous one instead of drawing a new line. So those little tricks can help you, and you just want to make sure that lines are parallel and perpendicular where possible or where necessary, because it makes your life easier when you go to make adjustments, and probably will copy this object to make a lot of the other things as well. So you want to keep everything nice and square. So then I'm just going to put in a default or an assumed height. I don't really know what the height is at the moment, so I'm going to say 20,000. It's from the ground floor level, so I've got to make sure that, I think that's high enough, so that's okay. So remember, the ground floor is not at 0. If we go, so I know Raj did something with the levels that I don't think I've done. I'm just going to show you. So I do still have my ground floor at 0. Oh, good. Yep. So I've just finished the model very quickly so that then I can show you what happens if you move this up, and actually that's why your site plan would have behaved differently to mine. So actually this is something I should be showing you as well. I know we're going to run out of time, but I really want to show you this. So when you start your own projects and the ground floor is not at 0, are you moving the ground floor up to that level? Is that what you did with the Raj? Or? Yes. And that's probably what you would have done previously. That's what most people do. But my little trick is to not do that. What I do, this is just me, and a couple of other people I know who I've told to do this, I make that a new level, or I give that a new name. So I'm going to call it, well, I often just call it ground, or ground line. And then I'll make this one ground floor. There's a couple of reasons for that. Because basically that establishes the base for a lot of other things. So if you look at your site views, for example, all of those site views, even though they don't have ground floor in the name, if you look at the properties, you'll actually see they're all associated with that level. And so if you move that level up, you're actually moving the height that the site plan is going to cut through, and that's why it will mess up the display. That's why your site plans weren't showing your topo surface. So that's a common problem people have with Revit. And also it can be then very hard to establish that 0 point again. We can still move these both, so I'm going to sorry, I'm going to look at that surface and I can see the the surface there is, let's measure it, at least 30 metres below the bottom of the hatch there. So I'm going to lift this up and say the ground line could be 30,000, 30 metres, even higher. We can maybe bring it up to 35. Oops, not 3,500, 35,000. And so if we need things to be at the lowest point that we'll ever need to use, we can use that level. But, oh no, sorry, now I think about it, the car park might be lower than that, so, you know, let's make it 30,000. Okay, but we probably won't use that level for very much. It's really just there as a placeholder, and it's fairly flexible. We can adjust that now. And so then this one, I'm going to take right up above that, trying to keep it in line. There we are. But notice how my building has come up with this, because again it was attached, the solid was attached to that level, and that's why again I don't like to use that initial ground floor level for my main base level, because your ground floor definitely with this building is going to change as you work out the building. You'll want to move that up and down at different points. And you don't want all of the things on your site that you've modelled for your site analysis to move up and down with it. So this is my base level. I'm going to say 30,000, which is hopefully below all of the ground that we're going to model. That's going to host all of these buildings. And so when we're trying to work out the height of the top of those buildings, we've got to work it out from there. But I can still do it visually as well by measuring now from that top corner to here. It's roughly, what, 7 metres? That building in reality, it's a new building. It's, I'd say it's about 7 stories. So it would be at least 20 metres, probably more like 30 metres high. And so it's 7 at the moment, even though it's 20,000 from here, it's 7 above the ground. So we want to add, 23 metres to that. So whatever it is at the moment, when I go back to select it, edit in place, and now select my solid, and so 20,000 plus 23,000 is 43,000.
Because we've done a different thing with our levels,
Yeah.
with our stories.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, what I would do is if I was placing these models on there, I would then later on just hide them. Does that not work?
It does, but it's not the best way of working. It's just going to create more work for you that you shouldn't have to do. So what I think you should do is get your ground floor level, because it's already tied in with those site views and everything else. Yeah. Move it down below all the other levels, give it a new name, and then make a new level and call it ground floor, and stick it in between level 1 and your basement.
We did make some other 2
Yep.
basement levels, so
Yep.
we can then move them up above it. Is that
Oh, you can leave them. So leave them where they are. Leave level 1 that's above your basement, and just move that ground floor level out below, and then make a new level for ground floor after you've renamed. Yeah. So yeah, so those things can trip people up with Revit, but once you get you know, a bit more, well, once you've done a few like this, it should work pretty smoothly. And so now I can just keep using the same process. Now you can see here, it's happened. Okay, because I've lifted that level up, it's changed the display, because my view range is taken from that that ground line. So here again I can go to view range, and this one needs to be adjusted. It's not the top, it's the bottom, which I will go and change to unlimited. And then the view depth, the basic rule is that the view depth needs to be lower than the bottom, or equal to. So both can be unlimited, and now I can see my site again. So then I might decide, well actually I want to see more of this and less of this, so I can of course adjust the crop region to do that. But then when I look back on the sheet, the view might need to just be repositioned a little bit. There we go. It's fine for now. And oh yeah, so the last thing, just before we finish up, is that I want to show you what consistent colours is for. So you can see it when you look at a basic form in 3D. Notice how this building has different colours on the sides. Now we know it's all probably set to be the one colour. It's probably a grey or even a white material, but we've got a light grey on the top, medium grey on the side, and then a dark grey on this side. And that's purely because of the angle of the viewer. So if I orbit the view, so that this one's on the right hand side, now it's lighter and this one's darker. So that shows you that the colour isn't staying the same, it's changing depending on the angle of the view. So it's really trying to do some basic lighting for you, which is useful in a lot of cases. But if you don't want that, you've got consistent colours for that. So if you just want things to stay the same, no matter what your angle is, that's when you use consistent colours. And it can help a lot when you're trying to do graphical images. So yeah, that should be enough to get you started on the site analysis. The other things like the graphical lines and the trees and what else? Well, a lot of other things we'll have to do next week. But actually I think there'll be plenty to go on with. Try and do a site visit this week and take as many photos as you can. And well, unless anyone's got any questions, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, sure. Oh, okay, so I use the what's it called? CE title block Chew Enterprises A3 Landscape Type 1. So, yeah. But if you just use a blank page, it would be okay. I'm not going to use this title block in the end. I'm going to change it to something else. So I'm just using that to get started. Yep. And I'll bring in the title blocks that I use and I'll give them to you if you want as well. But you probably all want to make your own. It's a good thing to... yeah, A3, that's the main thing. As long as it's A3, it doesn't really matter which one. As long as it's not the Autodesk ones. So that's good. So I'll finish the recording there.